You know that device you're holding right now? The digital infrastructure you rely on every single day? And frankly, the artificial intelligence that's actively shaping all of our futures? Well, all of it exists because of one incredibly radical decision made back in 1972. It happened when a handful of financial visionaries just packed up, ditched the traditional banking centers, and moved to a quiet 2-mile stretch of suburban asphalt out in California. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to explore the geography of capital and how one short street in Menlo Park literally engineered the modern world. Okay, let's dive right into this. Back in the early 1970s, the global financial world had this massive, glaring blind spot. Down in the Santa Clara Valley, a total tech explosion was underway. You had these lean, scrappy startups building early computers at absolute breakneck speed. But here was the catch. These founders didn't own giant factories. They didn't have massive real estate portfolios. Their true value was practically invisible. It was entirely locked up in intellectual property and raw brain power. And the traditional East Coast banks? They simply couldn't comprehend, let alone fund, ideas they couldn't physically reach out and touch. We are really looking at a tale of two completely different financial realities here. On the East Coast, the gold standard was what you might call the Manhattan stone monolith. It was this highly centralized system built entirely on heavy asset-backed debt. The banks demanded tangible collateral that they could seize if things went south, factory machinery, property deeds, physical stuff. But over on the West Coast, a totally different framework was quietly taking shape, the Sand Hill Road Wood Pavilion. Out there, the entire focus shifted to venture equity. They were funding pure abstract cognitive capital. But before this new world could actually thrive, the early pioneers of venture capital, guys like Tommy Davis and Arthur Rock, had to face a deeply relatable enemy: awful commute times. Seriously. Throughout the 1960s, they were operating out of these traditional, stuffy high-rises in downtown San Francisco. And if they wanted to go evaluate a raw microchip prototype down in Mountain View, they literally had to waste precious hours just sitting in terrible traffic down the peninsula. The physical geography of the area was quite literally slamming the brakes on innovation. Then, in 1972, firms like Kleiner Perkins and Sequoia Capital permanently broke that geographic mold. They looked out at the rolling foothills of Menlo Park and realized that a street called Sand Hill Road was the absolute geometric center of the tech universe. And the reason was simple: perfect logistics. On one side, you had highly walkable access to the brilliant engineering labs at Stanford University, and on the exact opposite side, immediate access to Interstate 280, which let investors just zip down to the manufacturing plants in 15 minutes flat. Now, what's really fascinating here is that these pioneers didn't just change their zip code, they completely redefined what it actually meant to be an investor in the first place. Enter the general partners, or GPs. Visionaries like Eugene Kleiner and Tom Perkins utterly rejected the passive, hands-off, money management style of the East Coast. They practically invented the concept of the venture capitalist as an active, boots-on-the-ground insider. They stepped directly onto corporate boards, they recruited top executives, and they personally guided these raw engineering concepts from a dusty garage all the way to global commercialization. Right around the same time, Don Valentine launched Sequoia Capital, and he brought a completely different, yet equally vital perspective to the table: volume scale. Valentine had this legendary, almost ruthless mindset. He famously said he didn't invest in founders, he invested in massive, underserved markets. He would look right past the complex internal engineering of a product and fixate entirely on its scalability. And it was exactly this approach that provided the crucial early capital needed to turn weird, raw concepts into massive household brands like Apple and Atari. But to truly grasp how this whole ecosystem hums, we have to flip the coin and look at the other half of the financial equation. Where do these massive pools of risk capital actually come from? Well, they originate from limited partners, or LPs. We're talking about elite university endowments, giant charitable foundations, and massive pension funds. To put that into perspective, it's everyday retirement money that often provides the multi-million-dollar liquid capital required to fuel these massive technological disruptions. It's kind of wild when you think about it. So, to connect the vast, cautious wealth of those LPs to the highly risky operational guidance of the GPs, Sand Hill Road engineered a frankly brilliant compensation architecture. It's known as the 2N20 model. That's a 2% annual management fee just to keep the lights on and pay the staff, paired with a massive 20% cut of all the capital gains generated by a startup's success. This wasn't just a basic fee structure. It was pure psychological alignment. It perfectly linked everyone's motives, ensuring that when the startup won big, everybody won exponentially. And honestly, just as crucial as that fee structure was the time horizon attached to these funds. 10 whole years. This patient, decade-long runway insulated venture funds from the agonizing, short-term quarterly earnings pressures that routinely paralyze traditional Wall Street markets. It gave founders the actual breathing room they desperately needed to build paradigm-shifting technologies from the absolute ground up without constantly checking their watches. Let's see how this all builds together into this incredible automated engine, which we can call the venture turbine feedback loop. If you strip away all the financial jargon, the flow is beautifully simple. First, institutional LPs inject liquid capital into the hands of the GPs. Then, the GPs infuse that money, along with their intense operational expertise, directly into their startup portfolio. Finally, when those startups successfully exit via massive public stock offerings, the newly generated wealth is recycled straight back into the system to fund the next generation of ideas. To really understand why this engine ran so incredibly fast, we have to look at the concept of architecture as finance. Think about it. Prior to the 1970s, institutional money was hidden away inside towering concrete skyscrapers, which were specifically designed to project rigid, intimidating hierarchies. But Thomas Ford's 3000 Sand Hill Road complex pioneered a totally alternative ecosystem, the horizontal redwood structure. We're talking open patios, seamlessly integrated into the natural California topography. It quite literally dismantled the intimidating gatekeepers of high finance. These wood-clad pavilions were engineered to manifest total structural transparency. Imagine floor-to-ceiling glass walls, warm redwood beams, central outdoor courtyards, and shared lunchrooms where everyone bumped into everyone else. The formal, stuffy three-piece suits of Wall Street were entirely replaced by a new uniform of open-collared shirts and casual khakis, a fashion trend the tech world absolutely hasn't let go of since, right? This low-slung, casual environment completely erased the psychological barriers between the holder of the capital and the creator of the technology. The ultimate result of this physical design was something known as the collision commons. The architecture itself actively encouraged informal high-speed deals. In fact, there is this famous reality from that era. An engineer with nothing but a raw software idea scribbled on a paper napkin could literally walk onto an open porch at Sand Hill Road, strike up a casual conversation with a general partner, and walk away with a multi-million-dollar seed commitment by that very same afternoon. No boardrooms required. And because of this intense physical proximity, this 2-mile corridor functioned as a totally automated venture capital operating system. It wasn't just the investors hanging out. You had specialized tech lawyers literally deferring their fees to help broke founders draft early corporate documents. You had a web of executive recruiters poaching seasoned managers from mature giants to guide fragile startups. The whole street was an automated infrastructure that could wrap a raw breakthrough in a corporate shell faster than an East Coast conglomerate could even call a board meeting. And this perfectly illustrates how, if we sweep through the history of tech, we can see that the underlying logic of that 1970s venture machine remains completely unbroken today. The continuum started with the hardware compute age back in 1972. Then, in the 90s, that exact same model backed the internet boom with giants like Netscape and Google. In the 2010s, it scaled custom software. And today, we are using the exact same financial turbine to fund the explosive era of cognitive systems, which connects the historical dots right to our present moment. Phase 7, the modern AI continuum. Listen, when modern venture funds pour hundreds of millions of dollars into totally unproven AI neural networks, they aren't inventing a new game. They are running the exact same playbook written by Arthur Rock and Tom Perkins decades ago. They are executing a classic asymmetric reward model. It's the calculated gamble that just one successful AI platform will achieve such massive monopoly scale, it will easily pay for the losses of an entire portfolio 100 times over. Interestingly, though, the physical command center has recently started to evolve. We are currently witnessing a dramatic spatial migration. The industry is shifting away from the quiet, suburban isolation of Menlo Park directly back into the hyperdense urban grid of San Francisco. Specifically, areas now universally nicknamed Cerebral Valley. Why? Because modern AI founders demand the exact same physical proximity and collision dynamics that were engineered in 1972. They want their hacker houses and venture lofts sitting right next door to each other. The geography changes, but the strategy doesn't.
Ultimately, this brings us to the incredible endurance of this entire model. The pioneers of Sand Hill Road broke the ancient tyranny of asset-backed finance. They established an operating system for the modern economy by holding on to 3 core beliefs. First, physical capital is just a commodity. Second, human intellect is sovereign. And third, we must be willing to radically expand the boundaries of human capability, operating right at the very edge of the frontier.
So, the crucial point we are left with is this. Does the ultimate destiny of our world belong to the physical assets we can touch, or the pure, boundless abstraction of the human mind? The software compiling tonight in San Francisco, and the silicon running the automated data servers all over our planet, they are traveling along the exact same financial highway paved back in 1972. I'll leave you to ponder that profound shift from tangible collateral to the sheer, unstoppable power of intellect. Thank you for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this deeper look changes the way you see the architecture of our modern world.